G'day there folks, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a speed draw and a little bit of a talk about some of the world building for one of my favourite aspects to draw, make art of, write about in the world that I'm creating, which is the Tower of Canolfin. Now, situated in the Praken hinterlands, that's the central landmass in the world of topsoil. The tower, built around a spire that had been there for, well, since before anyone had written records. The tower functions as a bit of a university. It is the central place of learning for most folks in topsoil. It's the place where people come to learn about how magic itself and all of the different arcane arts, whether that be creating arcane technology, whether that be enchantments or alchemy or any of those other aspects. The tower is a place for people to come and to learn. And I've drawn multiple aspects of this tower. It's kind of like a touchstone in the world. So as it changes over time, as it grows, shifts, gets covered up, gets more and more elements added to it, in it, around it, it can really be a way to sort of look at how the world of topsoil changes over time. So with this particular image that we're drawing today, this is very close to the completion of the tower as it was built, maybe 20-30 years after the tower itself had been constructed. And it is still in a pretty pristine, state. It's surrounded by idyllic farmland. It's got no large city like comes in later, and it's also not dealing with the rampant industrialism that was used to build it, because that's the structure, knowing that they needed to do something to fix the slew of issues and things that were happening, with a lot of sort of cataclysmic arcane events that were threatening to tear apart the world. The spire that was originally in place, the central backbone of the tower, was the only thing that folks could really point to as being something that was keeping the world together, keeping everything safe, and it was under direct attack. And so the idea of building a structure around it to protect it, but also to utilize some of the power there for good, and to create a space of learning, a place of study, so that one day they would be able to be in a situation where they didn't have to worry anymore about any of these potential issues. So that's what we're looking at, is a very, very early state of this tower. Something that happens almost immediately, and this is all the stuff that I'm drawing here now, is this parasitic architecture, this whole smorgasbord of buildings built on top of buildings, built on top of buildings, because the tower itself is this monumental structure, larger than anything else. The only thing that rivals it is the castura, and that's the original rod that it is built around. So there is nothing else like this that exists in this world. And so as things grow up around it, and as folks are realizing that they need more space than is present within the tower, it becomes common to just build a little cathedral here, or build a little extra dormitory there, or add an extra walkway to get to there. And I mean, the students probably need to buy, textbooks, and they probably need tailors, and they probably need all these other things. And so you get this vertical stratification of these buildings built on top of buildings, almost like your buildings in Venice. One of the very keen, inspirations for this is definitely Mont Saint Michel, or Mont Saint Michael, I think. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But a sort of cathedral island city in France, just piled up on top of each other. There's less, like in this case, they genuinely, like, you'll build a big building, and then someone will build another building on top of it, and another building on top of that. In Mont Saint Michel, it's more just working with the topography, the geology of the place. But absolutely, like, there's this really, really huge pile, this slow build-up of architecture as everything else tries to encroach on the height of the tower itself. And that means that you have more other folk, more outside folk. It's an easier way to access, it's an easier space. Now, because of all of these sort of things, the tower built as a way to encapsulate the castura, and the tower being used and designated as a university to be a centre of learning, a place for people to really be involved and to make a change in the world for the better, it becomes a sort of a contentious place, a place for people to look at, for people to want levels of power in. And it does slowly over time devolve. People have more access to the means of, making arcane technologies. They draw in funding and people and businesses so that they can make more money off of the things that they're designing. And it slowly turns from this sort of secular center of learning into something that's a little bit more macabre. But one of the biggest things that I think I want to talk about with Kynolfin, and this is something that I feel very strongly about and that I kind of want people to think about as well, is we have institutions like this in our own world. Like, there's so many universities, businesses, places of learning that start out with noble, or maybe not so noble intentions, and through hard work are made more noble, or through the slow decay of beliefs and ideas and all that sort of stuff become less noble. So that's why I think I enjoy drawing and writing about Kynolfin so much, is it really represents this duality of like what is quite obviously, and at least I hope in how I present things, something almost inspiring. It's this feat of architecture and work from so many different people coming together to make something that really stands out as collective, wonderful, inspiring place to be. But without the necessary upkeep, it becomes something more sinister, more sad, more focused on the bureaucracy and the way that everything has to go, than being something that is actually enjoyable, something that people would care about, something that people want to care about. And I feel like there are a lot of people who feel the same way about academic institutions, journalism, a lot of different places today in which people are sort of disenchanted with all these notions of what things are, because they don't feel like they're living up to the way that they were. And I can say immediately that there are some things that are arguably better not being the way that they were, and that, we should be happy for the things that we have that are definitely better, that are safer, more humane, more egalitarian. But there are also things that, some situations where there's places of learning, places of teaching and understanding that have just sort of become very focused on the businesses of things and not on, ethics, morality. So Kynolfin really is a representation of that. And I don't have answers, I think, around one of the biggest things that often comes up in when I'm writing about things is you get these characters and then they're thinking about, well, is it better to keep the structure, keep the work of generations spent building this, this university, which originally had the best intentions at heart of providing learning and equal opportunity to all of the different folks across Topsoil. And Topsoil as a world has everything from humans to, there's a lot of folks who are, infected's the wrong word, exposed to arcane radiation, I suppose, are considered tempered. They transfer into different sort of subsects of phenotypes, bodies and things like that. So there's the humanoid race of Draconians, who have sort of more lizard-like features because they've been exposed to fire magic, fire arcana, igneous power, and they slowly transform over time into these things, and then they themselves exist as a separate group, a separate culture, a separate entities in this world that then have their own desires, their own sort of beliefs, their own cultural standpoints. And as it stood, the Tower of Kynolfin was this really lovely place where everyone of every different sort of background would be able to come and contribute and learn without any worries about being treated differently because of, their temperance or the way that they were born or their social class or standings. And that noble pursuit at the start, that noble desire to make a place where people can truly learn and truly feel like they are cared for, understood, that they can do what they can with their power to learn and to do better things. Well, if that is tainted and twisted by the desires and actions of others. If, as the board of directors goes out and there's a new dean and the college builds up a small city around it, well, a small town, then a small city, then a large city, then the largest city in the world, all centered around this thing. If the tower slowly shifts into this heaving mass of commerce and only focusing on a desire for teaching students things that can make them money, stopping tempered folk from allowing to study at the university, because it's just worse to, when you have a system that was built from a sense of egalitarianism. I'm sort of reversing the roles in some of the places that we had, places that started off unequal and that have slowly become more equal. A lot of things in topsoil are kind of backwards. Places that started out as close to what you would consider a utopian vision for how to create and run a place, that are then twisted and bent in the other ways. And if that happens, is it the prerogative of the people to then try and fix those systems, to unseat the people who are doing the wrong things and to make things better, to change things around, to give their own voice and passion and power to the strife and the struggles that the people in the world are dealing with? Or must the system itself be completely destroyed? And that's a mental sort of philosophical challenge that happens within topsoil. A lot of the stories, especially the ones focusing around this area and these time periods, are, do we just make what's there better, or do we have to destroy it? And I don't know. I personally think that's where the joy is, in trying to sit and think about that. Think about those things, whether they are what the best course of action is. And the best way to do that, for me, is through writing and art and storytelling. So this, I've tried to show it in its very early stages, when it was still a sort of a shining beacon, a place where folks felt seen, where they could do their studies, where, you know, the very golden age and almost an enlightenment period here in topsoil. This drawing's still a work in progress. I need to add in, at later points, all of the industrial remnants and waste from the industrial process that was used to build it. Because again, you know, went through the process of tearing up the earth and extracting raw materials and extracting the arcanite, which is the crystal that basically stores arcana, to build this monstrous tower. And if that's the process that happened in its creation, then did the ends justify the means? So the tower itself has been loved and adored and hated and reviled by people throughout the history of topsoil. That's part of its allure to me in terms of a storytelling element. But I like writing about it from different perspectives. And one of the perspectives that I did try was how it would be present in the poetry of the world itself, including the parasitic architecture, including the lives of the people who live in the spaces outside the tower itself. That dichotomy between this huge standing shining spire and the rickety shacks that are stapled onto the side of it as people try to live their life in the only place that they really know how to. So I'll read that poem, and it might be something to really get you a bit of an idea of how I think that people in this world might see the tower itself. Bright trunk downrooted, wet from the rain, the terracotta caps of your fungal symbiotes shimmer. No canopy graces your stem to stop the deluge, and the 1,000 parasites that dance around your base thrive and shut themselves in to avoid the storm. The cumulus shadows that billow overhead swirl around you, unhindered. Yet you are no eye to a hurricane's ire. You spin, and each side of your stone-strong bark is met with the torrent, shining beyond your many specks of bioluminescence. Bright tower, unwavering. Watch the waterfalls that fill your balconies to overflowing. Count the drips that converge to cascade down your 1,000 stairways. Count the doors that are barricaded, families safe beside the fire as they watch the world wetten from 300 rounds in the air. Count the doors left open. The folks who long ago decided a river running through the house is safer than one running around. Count the windows with no light, in the dark and turgid hollows, the old courtyards where the water rises level to the roofs. How often do you look into a cistern and see the pillars and the windows sweeping ever downwards? Bright sun, above the clouds and shining through, bake dry this drenched spire as it turns upon the axis of the world. Count the spaces you cannot reach. Count the sporophytes and green mosses that bloom in the grottos where the water sits and never dries. Question why it never stagnates, why even in the driest months the water wheels still spin and the gardens still bloom. And would we want it any other way? Thank you very much for watching, guys. We'll be back for another one next week. And I really hope you enjoyed today's video.